Yuji and Nanami are the poster boys of jumping within JJK. When you think about the most iconic memes from this series behind the "Not I'd Win" incident, the main one to come to mind was Yuji and Nanami beating the bricks out of Mahito. Well, in today's video, let's talk about what would happen if these two were to come to blows. What's up guys, Restless Gambly here, and in today's video, I decided to put Yuji up against the likes of his mentor, Nanami. In the latest episode of Jujutsu Kaisen, Nanami met his tragic demise at the hands of Mahito and uttered a couple of words that put this matchup into perspective. Itadori, you've got it from here. Had Yuji finally surpassed Nanami, or was Nanami's experience still in the way of Yuji's succession? Let's find out in today's video. If you enjoy JJK versus battles like these, go ahead and subscribe. You'll get more videos and we'll both be happy. Starting off with our favorite grade 1 sorcerer, we have Nanami. Nanami's scaling is kinda weird considering his curse technique and binding vow. If you don't know, anytime before 5 PM, Nanami is actually not at his full potential. In chapter 22, Nanami is in the middle of a scuffle with Mahito. As their battle drags on, Mahito is seen chilling while Nanami has suffered an injury. Mahito questions if that's all he's got, and in response, Nanami just sighs, saying, "How unfortunate." Just then, Mahito notices that his curse energy is going through change. Nanami emphasizes that he's working overtime now, and so it's revealed to us that Nanami actually put a binding vow on his cursed energy. And so now that he's working overtime, his cursed energy is back and then some. In a fanbook, it's actually stated how overtime works. Before overtime is put into play, or in other words, during normal work hours, Nanami's curse energy is suppressed to about 80 to 90% of his normal curse energy. And during overtime, his curse energy skyrockets to around 110 to 120%. Beyond that, Nanami has a curse technique, the ratio technique. What it is at its core is the ability to divide up a subject with lines and force a weak spot at a ratio point of 7 to 3. So basically, if you don't understand, he'll divide something, let's say a wall, into 10 lines. And so the weak spot from these 10 lines would be the 7th point from the left to the right, or the 3rd point from the right to the left. Now, the reason I mentioned both overtime and his technique before diving into strength, speed, durability, and every other stat like I usually do is because Nanami's entire bag is reliant on these two things. Any feats he performs without overtime isn't really indicative of his true power, and any feats during overtime could be considered his full power. Also, at the same time, his ratio technique is so commonly used, I don't even think I could scale his attack potency without it. I mean, it's logical. Who wouldn't want to attack a weak spot? And so I'll be scaling with both of these factors in mind. Starting off with strength, Nanami is no slouch when it comes to hitting weak spots. As a baseline, we can refer to the scuffle with Mahito we mentioned earlier. Before overtime, he and Mahito fought relatively, but Nanami had the slight edge as he avoided most of Mahito's attacks so he wouldn't get transfigured. As he hits Mahito's weak spot, he actually destroys his arm, but Mahito reshapes his soul back to how it used to be to reverse the damage. Now, this isn't really telling of either Nanami's attack potency or Mahito's durability, since we don't have a solid way to scale Mahito's durability, since throughout the entire series, he doesn't take damage unless it's from Yuji or Sukuna. As for Nanami's AP, something more concrete is his absolute deletion of Haruta. After failing to damage Nanami twice, Nanami looks bro in the face, uses ratio technique, and punches him away. This attack alone was something Haruta said was supposed to kill him. This isn't that much of a feat, but notice that every time Nanami goes in for a punch, he uses ratio technique. This is to emphasize a basis for the best thing to scale Nanami's AP, and the most relevant one to this matchup. In chapter 94, we see Yuji himself attempt to punch a barrier. Note that Yuji uses 0 curse energy on this attack. In the anime, they really emphasize just how strong Yuji is, with his base punch creating insane waves of impact. But on topic, in reaction to this punch, Ino says that if they're talking straight striking power, he might be on Nanami's level. At the very bare minimum, this puts Nanami's AP on par with beginning of Shibuya Yuji. Now, I emphasize at the very bare minimum because there is a lot of ambiguity and nuance to this statement. Number one being, Ino's bias. Ino is literally stated to be a Nanami dick rider. One of his goals is to get Nanami's watch as a hand-me-down. I don't know what the hell is up with that, but I think you get the point. This is something we see throughout the story, main one being... Anyways, this was also shown when Dagon was comparing Naobito's speed to Jogo. His characterizations for different characters to have their own personal biases that interfere with their power scaling. And I bring this up to say that this at least puts them equal in striking strength, but with a little bit of wank and a different interpretation, you could say that Yuji might be stronger. For the sake of this video, we'll just say that they're equal. The second bit of ambiguity is what exactly striking power refers to. Ino says that Nanami and Yuji are at the same level in striking power, but what would that mean? Would it mean just regular AP without cursed energy or cursed technique, or would it mean the damage that's being dealt? One interpretation that could be made now that the anime has come out is that Ino was talking about a base punch. The only thing that's wrong with this is the fact that this would mean Nanami would have similar inhuman strength to Yuji that was compared to heavenly restriction. Not once has Nanami been emphasized to have this kind of strength, so that's what makes this statement confusing. Now, taking into account that almost every time we see Nanami throw a punch, he's using his curse technique, I think this could refer to both striking power, but Nanami's includes him hitting a weak spot. Now, if you take the first interpretation that Nanami's base punches are at the same level as Yuji's base punches, this is insane. If you don't remember, back in the Goodwill arc, Megumi, who hasn't seen Yuji in a couple months, claims that without cursed energy, Yuji would defeat Todo. Then in the next chapter, Maki herself says that everyone's combined strength would probably get soloed by Todo, and Yuji stands on business saying that, nah, he would win. Now, obviously this would include Todo's cursed energy and his cursed technique, but the fact that this comparison was rubbed in our faces again just goes to show how strong this version of Yuji was. And so if Nanami's base striking power is equal to this and even more, this nigga is a monster. Add in the fact that he has a cursed technique that allows him to hit a weak spot, and yeah, Nanami is no slouch. As for the second interpretation, it's not that much of a wank for him, considering the fact that it would mean him punching a weak spot would be equal to Yuji just punching. For speed, Nanami isn't as crazy in this department. We see him fight relatively against Mahito in the versus Mahito arc, with him actually taking damage. But this was before overtime, so when he actually enters overtime, he violates Mahito, striking a wall to fall on Mahito, then blitzing him while telling him to dodge and cutting his leg. A couple chapters later, Nanami and Yuji jump Mahito, and I'm not really sure if this is him in overtime or not, but you can see the clear relativity between him and Mahito and him and Yuji, as he's jumping Mahito without hindering Yuji and vice versa. Now in the Shibuya arc, we don't really get to see that many things, but considering Nanami should scale above Maki from her earlier scaling, the feats Maki performs should be something Nanami should be doing and more. Like Maki reacting to Dagon's attacks and blocking them, and you know, this crazy ass feat right here. But there's not really much to say about Nanami other than his relativity to Mahito and Yuji back in those earlier arcs. For durability, I don't think I could even find a sorcerer who got this level of portrayal regarding how sturdy his body is. When Nanami was fighting Haruta, he tried to kick and slash him with a sword, but Haruta compared kicking him to a f***ing boulder. He even said it didn't feel as if he kicked a person, and as for the slash, it did absolutely nothing. This is overtime Nanami, so maybe the flow of his cursed energy is so potent that it allows this, but nevertheless, this is insane portrayal regarding his durability, and we see even more when he enters Dagon's domain. The sure hit attacks Nanami and it does damage of course, but then Dagon sends even more at Nanami, and you see the impact of every single fish. They're biting him everywhere. But when he returns after this swarm, the only injuries he suffers are on his arm and face. Nanami has insane durability, and I don't think people realize just how much overtime buffs it. Now, Nanami's endurance, oh my gosh. During Shibuya, he went through the torture that was the death swarm, exited the domain, got burnt to a crisp by Gojo, continued on to get up and wander around Shibuya looking like he's Two-Face, then fought dozens of transfigured humans, only to finally die to the hands of Mahito. Literally, you can't downplay the fact that he took all this punishment and still managed to continue fighting. With all that said, we spent a lot of time scaling Nanami. So let's go on now to scale the star boy of the series, Yuji Itadori. Now, this guy is way easier to scale than Nanami because he has no curse technique and the only thing he could do is punch and kick. Starting off with strength, of course, we have the Inno statement once again. Yuji's base punch with 0 curse energy is equated to Nanami's base punches or his attacks with the ratio technique. Again, there's a lot of ambiguity, but regardless, Yuji would get a large increase in strength after adding curse energy into the mix. We see this firsthand with only 3 attacks doing tons of damage to Choso and his scuffles with Mahito. But what puts him even higher is his potent use of Black Flash. Now, this is actually crazy that I mentioned this because Nanami as well is a Black Flash enthusiast. In fact, both Yuji and Nanami are tied for the most Black Flashes in a row, having done 4. Regardless, the most you can say is that at this point of the story, Yuji is equal in AP to Nanami, with Nanami having an advantage if he hits a weak spot. But a more important stat to go over is speed. Now, this one is completely different because I already said that Nanami is relative to Yuji and Mahito during the versus Mahito arc. Both Mahito and Yuji get exponentially stronger and faster since then, and Nanami has no showings for him getting stronger. Since that arc, Yuji enters Goodwill and hones his control over his cursed energy. Then he hits 1, 2, 3, 4 Black Flashes, to which Gojo says, "Yeah, you're definitely stronger." Then he enters Shibuya and literally reacts to piercing blood, something that moves at the speed of sound. And then finally, he's fighting relatively to Mahito. Now, even with all this, Yuji has the potential to get even faster if he can hit a Black Flash because he enters the zone. Same goes for Nanami, but based on these feats, Yuji definitely takes this stat. We're gonna go off script here and skip Yuji's durability because he's a regular human. The one that actually matters is endurance. This stat is Yuji's bread and butter. Yuji and endurance is like me and Sanji, they go hand in hand. Yuji can be seen going through tons and tons of damage and still going on to fight. The perfect example of this was during this season where Yuji literally lost some of his liver, then said, "Damn, alright, let's go again." You can't stop Yuji with just pain, you have to knock him out of commission. The way for Choso to do this was 1. Pierce his arms then slash his face with piercing blood. 2. Slash his face again with piercing blood. 3. Hit him with supernova. 4. Stab both of his feet. 5. This insane wombo combo. 6. Then hit him with a weaker piercing blood. Y'all get the point, bro. Yuji is an endurance king, so he can really take punishment for a long time before giving in. But at what point is it that Yuji will, in quotations, give in? Well, I feel like it's at a point where multiple vital organs have been taken away. Choso took away bro's liver, then punched off his shoulder and punched him away. This plus everything before that was enough to put Yuji out of commission. For Yuji's hacks, he has Divergent Fist, which he probably won't use against Nanami, and Black Flash, something Nanami has as well. So with all of this scaling done, what will the outcome be? Will the veteran grade 1 sorcerer show Yuji how it's done, or has Yuji officially surpassed Nanami? Let's find out. For this battle, it'll take place in Shibuya, of course. We have a current Yuji who's fully healed up after Sukuna just massacred an entire city, and Nanami at full strength. Yuji pulls up to the same place as he saw Nanami die, but instead, they're squaring up, ready to fight. Now, of course, we can't forget the 2 interpretations from earlier, so it can go one of 2 ways. Nanami's AP when he strikes is equal to Yuji's AP when he strikes, so adding ratio technique makes the damage more potent. And the second option being that Yuji's AP when he strikes is equal to the AP when Nanami strikes, plus he hits the weak spot. To be fair to both combatants, we'll go with the first one. Same rules as always, whoever dies or gets knocked out first loses. So let's go and simulate the fight. Play the Budokai music. So the fight starts and they start running at each other. Yuji is aware of the ratio technique, so he avoids any attacks that Nanami can throw. So upon dodging the first attack, they square up once again and run at each other. But this time, Yuji is faster. We've seen consistently that Yuji has better speed feats compared to Nanami, and so he pummels him, dealing heavy damage with each blow. As there's an opening, Nanami counters with his own punch and he hits a black flash. He's officially in the zone. Nanami takes over the fight now, dealing heavy damage to the point where Yuji has to retaliate with his own black flash. With both of the fighters in the zone now, the winner of the battle can only come down to whose stats are higher. And guess who's faster? Yuji Itadori. So he finishes the fight with a barrage of attacks, thus winning the ultimate battle. Now hold on. Of course, like you could probably tell from the simulation, this fight would be high diff. Nanami and Yuji at this point are so on par, but I think the symbolism of him telling Yuji that he's got it from here tells us that Yuji took the torch and officially surpassed him. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. If you got this far and enjoyed, go ahead and subscribe. You're doing both of us a favor. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.